name's Gary Holder, for those that don't know me. And my story began actually in July of 2019. And I know some of you probably weren't even here at that time, so I felt it appropriate just to kind of recap what actually happened. So in July 2019, I was at work one morning and had some, quite nasty chest pains. So I drove myself to the doctor. We always laugh about that. I drove from Mechanicsburg to Chambersburg, so Jodie didn't have to travel very far to see me. Jodie's my wife. And anyway, to cut a long story short, they did a few tests and said my heart was fine, and they did a CT scan and they described it as that I had a spot on my liver, which obviously, people kind of know what that means. Further investigation revealed actually that I had more than 10 tumors all across both sides of my liver. They also, told me that I had no surgery options, no transplant options, no radiation options, and that I'd got 3 months to live. So that was quite a shock, really. They also, that weekend, I'd already shared it with Kevin. He came to visit us in the hospital, and anyway, on that Sunday after that, the whole church came forward and prayed for me. I'm sorry if I'm going to get emotional, but it's been an emotional roller coaster over the last 3.5 years. Anyway, the church came forward and prayed for us, and I believe that was really the moment where God said that I've got this under control.
Wow.
And I believe that's the point at which my healing process actually started. I was referred to Johns Hopkins Hospital for a second opinion. Bear in mind, I'd only been given 3 months to live. That's 13 weeks. My appointment wasn't until 6 weeks later, so I had another 6 weeks of, I guess, analysing my life, realising that, it may have come to an end. I was very comfortable with where I was going. Many people don't have an opportunity to share last times with their partner before things happen. And we did. I can't look that way.
It's over here again.
and we did, but we were very comfortable in our faith, And I know that when I die, I'm going to be with Jesus, and I'm fine. And I know where my family is too, and that's just an amazing thing. So I was comfortable, and always have been comfortable that God's got it in control, and I know where I end up. This is just a drop in the ocean, our lives here. Anyway, I went to Hopkins for a second opinion 6 weeks later. And I was diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of liver cancer called cholangiocarcinoma. I say that because you might just want to look it up. And when you read the statistics about this particular cancer, you'll realize why it's so amazing that I'm able to stand up and talk to you 3.5 years later. It's also known as bile duct cancer. It only affects about 8,000 people in the whole of our 350 million population every year. So that's how rare the cancer actually is. Amazingly enough, the oncologist that I was referred to was actually an authority on this cancer, and and it was amazing. I actually ended up with him, and he actually recognized what type of cancer I had immediately. He basically said, I'm 99% sure what you've got. I said, I'll just do one more test, but I'm sure. Now, in Chambersburg, they weren't aware of this type of cancer or didn't know what to look for, but he just knew immediately. That was a miracle in itself, that God put those people. I have just 3 key people at Hopkins. That's my oncologist, the oncology nurse, and the infusion nurse. And they have just been our rock there, haven't they, Jodie? They're like our family. And just taken just fantastic care. And I know that God put those people in our lives, no question of it. So I started chemo with 3 different drugs, and it's kind of cutting edge stuff because he mixed an extra one in there. He looked at me that day. He said, "I think you look strong enough to be able to take this extra one." So there are 3 very strong chemo drugs that I was on. So I, lost the hair and all that stuff. And for those of you that have experienced chemo, you know what I'm talking about. It's very, very hard on your body, and it doesn't mean that I've been left with no effects of that. It kind of does scramble your brain a little bit, which is why I needed to make sure I wrote this down. I still get a little bit tired, but little bits of stuff compared to 3.5 years later, here I am. You look at the big picture and it's just amazing.
Wow.
So I started the treatment with the chemo drugs, the 3 chemo drugs, and over a period of months, we watched the tumors either disappearing completely. We'd go for the next scan and, well, that's not there anymore, that's not there anymore. There was no sign of it, you know. Some were just like dissolving away, and some just disappeared completely. And it got to the point where we'd always ask the oncologist, well, how long do you think I've got? Because I've been originally given 3 months. Then it went to like 3 to 6 months. Then it went from 6 to 12 months. And it never really got beyond that. So eventually he said, Gary, he said, I think you've got years. That was what he said, which was just, you know, amazing in itself. So when we got to that point where there was actually no sign in my body of any active cancer, so that's where we got to. And actually the church made a video of my testimony at that time. You know, and I was like sitting there, you know, really pretty sure that God had, you know, worked a miracle in my life, and that I may have been completely healed. And I believed that I was. But then, of course, very shortly after that, and this is I guess the update for people, is that you may have heard that my cancer had returned. And, you know, you may have felt a bit discouraged by it. I wasn't. I don't, you know, I'm not the best of Christians by any means, but there's been one thing that's been consistent in my life. You know, I've never doubted that God's been in control, and I'm not worried about where I'm going. So that I can honestly say that, you know, I'm useless in lots of other areas, but that was just, but that was just, you know, I honestly believe that, and it's kind of got me through.
Wow.
And anyway, you after seeing that video and probably feeling, you know, very blessed that you guys had prayed for me, and you know what was apparent there was almost a complete healing. You know, so you may have felt discouraged. You may not have believed that God had really been working in my life, and I wanted to bring you up to date, which is, you know, something I'd asked Kevin if I was able to do that a little while ago. So on January the 24th last year, so just over a year ago now, I had a CT scan, and on that CT scan it showed that there was no active cancer. January the 24th. We actually went to Jamaica at the end of March for our 40th wedding anniversary. That was a lovely experience.
Yeah.
Thank you. She's tolerated me for a long time. And I had a little bit of discomfort on the plane on the way there, and I just put that down to, you know, they're just little tiny seats, and I'm not a little tiny guy, you know. And anyway, I had a little bit of discomfort while we were actually on the vacation. No issues whatsoever. Coming back again, a little bit of discomfort on the plane. Didn't really put it down to anything other than the tight seats. However, a few days after that, I'll make sure I missed anything here. Yeah, a few days after that, I actually was experiencing some really terrific pain. Terrific pain. I mean, Timothy was there. I was there at the hospital, and you know, I've never felt pain like it. It was actually, they believe, tumors rubbing on the inside of my ribs, I guess, but that was what was causing it. So they did another scan. Bear in mind, January 24th, no issues. End of March, cancer was completely back. You know, very, very aggressive again. And the oncologist said, I can't explain to you why this has happened.
And you've heard that like 100 times through this whole story.
Yeah. He said, I can't explain to you, you know, why this has happened, but it's there. So it was like back to, okay, well, back to the chemo. So I was back on those 3 strong chemo drugs again. So I was basically back where I started.
You better buckle up. This is where the God moment comes in right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, because of the success of the treatment, they were never able to get a good biopsy. When I had my original one at Chambersburg in the July, they didn't get enough material for them to send off for genetic tests and stuff like that. And he said, look, well, they've got, and they could never get enough material in subsequent biopsy attempts because there was hardly anything there to biopsy. So he said there's a new way of doing a biopsy now called a blood biopsy, where they just basically take some blood and they can do a biopsy on that to find out exactly what type of cancer it is, which they knew, but they didn't know whether any gene mutations that might be able to help me. Well, it turns out that after the liquid biopsy, they found a gene mutation which is called BRCA2. Some of you may know what that is. It's known as the breast cancer gene. And, you know, some famous people have had this stuff. For men, that means there's an increased risk of pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, and breast cancer, because obviously men can get breast cancer too. For women, there's an increased risk of ovarian cancer and an 84% chance that they'll get breast cancer, so it's pretty serious. Hayley is my daughter, and she was the first to be checked, and it was positive. So Hayley, my daughter, has the BRCA2 mutation. And can I introduce you to Hayley? Hey, would you just come up a second? I only have one daughter, and just isn't she beautiful? Well, I can tell you, I felt guilty that I'd got this BRCA2 mutation. I mean, it wasn't my fault, but I felt really guilty about it. And I remember Hayley saying do you remember what you said to me? You say what you said? No. No. She spoke to me one day, and she said, Dad, and I was feeling like really guilty about this. She said, Dad, I feel like you've saved my life. Because there are some options for Hayley. They're pretty, nasty things to have to go through. But for her to escape this 84% chance that she's going to get breast cancer, she's got the option of having a double mastectomy and her ovaries removed, and that'll move it to 95% chance that she'll never get it.
Isn't that incredible?
And, so this was the point I realized that if this cancer hadn't have come back, I never would have known. I wouldn't know the risks that my kids have. And, for the parents among you, you'll know that you do anything for your kids. If it's a choice between, hey, Gary, you're going to have your cancer back, or you save your life for your kids, there's no question there. That's for any of us, for me or Jody, we'd just sacrifice our lives in a heartbeat to protect our kids. And, that was just an amazing miracle, because if all of these things hadn't happened, never would have known. I might have had to watch my daughter going through that stuff, and, she's such a treasure. So I praised God that the cancer came back. And that might sound a bit crazy to some people, but I'll tell you, I did. Because without it, we would never have known. And sometimes things happen for a reason. And we do need to trust God that He's in control. But it's not very often that we find out why something's happened. This time it's been just a fantastic thing to realize why. The good thing is that right now, I'm almost back to where I was a year ago. God's restored me back to where I was. I'm not on chemo anymore. I actually start a drug trial next week, which is specifically for people with my type of cancer that have this BRCA2 gene mutation. So, and if this works, that'll be just pills for 2 years, and 2 years is a long time in the cancer world for other healing. I mean, typically this cancer is not curable. You're going to die from it in the natural. So, and I really also want to thank you guys that have just continued to pray, and I know there's been many of you that have done that. I just know that your prayers are heard, and God does answer them. Wow. It isn't always the way we think, but God does answer those prayers. I mean, who'd have thought that cancer coming back was the answer to a prayer? It's just amazing. But I didn't want you guys to feel let down, that God let us down, because He didn't. I'd gone through so many miraculous things up until I made that video a year ago, and they've just continued. And, you know, and I feel if the only, I mean, I don't know what my purpose is in this life, but I still feel that God does. I actually had a phone call the other day, or a message the other day from the oncology nurse asking if I wouldn't mind being connected with somebody who'd got this cancer. And he'd been treated 6 months ago and it's come back and he's feeling really down about it. So I'm, you know, hopefully going to be able to connect to some person. Maybe that's going to be it. Maybe I get my opportunity to share Jesus with him and that element of my healing. I hope it is. That'd be just fantastic. Thank you so much for your continued prayers. Like I say, they have made a terrific difference, and you know, I just thank you for that.